Welcome to the first 100 Days, a show for revenue practitioners by revenue practitioners, giving you unscripted access and tips to help you navigate any new transition or initiative, both in life and at work.
When we think about the agency side, the consulting side, you're often limited to the program that your client has scoped you with, right? So even if you're a great agency like the one that I used to work for, where you always are trying to go above and beyond to provide value on top, you're still limited to the scope. You don't get the full view. You don't actually see the inner workings of the customer you serve unless you're embedded in their business, meaning you actually sit in-house with them. You have the same .com as them, and that's a different role than the agency. That's more deep consulting. And so from the agency perspective, the digital marketing perspective, you don't get to see all those inner workings. So you don't actually know what they're up against internally day to day. The project you're working on, your goals you're trying to achieve with them, but you don't know a lot about what other priorities they have, what other goals they have, what are they on the hook for personally or as an organization. Like you don't always have that full view. When in-house is obviously different. You actually have that full 360-degree view. And because you have that, you make different decisions that when you're on the agency side, when a client kind of changes their mind about something, you don't always understand the why behind it. You're like, of course, like we'll help, we'll make this pivot, but you don't actually understand. Whereas in-house, you get why you're making that pivot. So the pressure is different and how you prioritize what you're doing is different than kind of agency work.
What was your thought process like when you were considering whether I stay with like agency consulting world versus going in-house?
So for me, it was really about what is the next step in my career. I have career goals, I have ambitions, I want to get to a certain place. And at some point, I was going to have to pivot to go in-house to get where I want to go. And it always, to me, I always told myself I would leave agency and go in-house when it was the right opportunity and the right product. So it had to be a company where I could be really passionate about the product so that that's all you're going to be working from a day-to-day perspective. And so you have to be really excited about it. And when this opportunity came up, I was so excited because as someone who's been in digital marketing my entire career and really has leveraged analytics to make business decisions and decisions for my customers and my clients at the time, going to a company where I could have that kind of in my hands at all time was really exciting to me. I was like, yes, this is the dream. And I think about the modernization and the transformation of marketing, and Domo is it. Like they are, I think that if you really want to transform your company and really grow, you need something like Domo. Like it is crucial to helping put action and data and glean insights for every part of your organization to help you grow. And that is what I got excited about. I was like, I get to go and architect this global demand center in this company about a product that I was really excited about. That was what kind of drove my change. It had to be the right company and the right role for me to get to my next level. Otherwise, I wouldn't have made the change.
That's amazing. I can definitely sense the excitement through you. So it's like, they should put you more on stage, like evangelizing Domo to marketers, because like, I was like the whole time, yeah, I'm excited too. Go, Domo.
Well, I mean, awesome. It's pretty 8 months in, I'm still like, yes. And I'm sure 8 years from now, I will still be the same. Yes, because it is that exciting. It is really just exciting.
That's awesome. That's great. So my second question was, so you mentioned about different decisions that you can make now that you're in-house. Like maybe we'll share one or two of them.
There have been programs and prioritization of what type of programs I want to build to help further the growth of the demand center and the demand efforts that we do. And some of those decisions that I've made are decisions where they are foundational to that growth, where you don't always get to build that in an agency. So when I'm prioritizing what you think about as above the water, what are these really cool, fun, exciting things to share and programs to run, and what are the below the water, which are the foundational pieces that are just as important, but they're just not as sexy, honestly. So those are the prioritizations that I had to look at, or what are some of the things that are going to move the needle that maybe aren't as, from the outside, aren't as like shiny, sparkly. And then what are the things that are above the water and are the shiny, really cool things that also will move the needle.
So you have many enterprise clients with their demand programs, and now doing the same at Domo. What has been your all-time favorite demand gen initiative or demand gen place?
A really good example was one of my old global SaaS customers. They had this really great, large, new global research report that they did, and they wanted to leverage it across all their regions, obviously to drive demand, because they saw this piece of content as an opportunity and pipeline creating piece of content. So that's the I guess the context of the program. Now, we had a very short amount of time to pull this off. We had 4 weeks basically to implement, to make this report work across, the whole globe and all the regions. So we had to not only quickly create a strategy and a tactical plan for the demand part, but we actually really worked closely with our customer to hone in on the right messaging and user experience to make sure that when the prospect clicked on the ad or visited the microsite, that it was actually aligned with their expectations, both professionally, but also culturally. Because while this was a global piece of content designed to drive, pipeline and opportunities, it still needed to be localized and have a really regional focus to it. So we had to convince the client that yes, the report is awesome, but we need it broken down into more localized reports that were going to drive demand in specific regions. So pulling regional specific details to the front of the report, they could still have the full global report, but having a focus on the region and localizing for Japan, for instance, making sure that the report, while it was a global report, had a lot of emphasis on the regional aspect of Japan. The interesting thing is we tested in some countries both English and in language ads. So in non-English markets, we were like, let's just test and see, because some business speakers, they have their native language and they also have business language. What we found really interesting was that in one country in particular, it was the Japan part, the Japan program we were running, the English ads performed as well as the Japanese ads, which was really interesting to see. And I think when we dug into it, it is because there are a lot of folks who are looking for this particular piece of SaaS that were in region, but weren't necessarily Japanese. And so being able to cater to both the in-language audience as well as business people who work in that, who maybe aren't as nuanced in the kind of cultural messaging and things like that, really helped the program.
That would have never crossed my mind. You think, yeah, you got to localize, duh. But then this is surprising. Okay, yeah, that's true. It makes sense, actually.
Yeah, it was really interesting. And we were all like really proud of the campaign. It performed exceptionally well. We ended up being nominated for an award for kind of best use of content and channel to drive demand. But it was a really fun campaign where we were able to take this really great global asset and localize it and make and have it resonate in the different regions to really drive that pipeline creation.
And you guys did that in 4 weeks?
We did that in 4 weeks.
Whew. Your team is amazing.
It's not easy. I had a really amazing team.
Yeah, it's not easy to pull off in a global program in that short time. That is incredible.
Nope. And the customer was amazing too, because it was a true partnership. Like they had to do a lot of the heavy lifting when it came to regionalizing the content while we were working on the ads. And that's why that's part of the reason why it was one of my favorites, is because it was really collaborative.
That's amazing. So I'm segueing a little bit, because I always have this admiration for people from agency, because you guys seen all kinds of clients, industries, and you've seen all the best practices. So this year is like a hiring frenzy. So everyone's like changing jobs, switching everywhere. For marketers out there, like the modern marketer today, like what would you recommend in terms of what would make a great demand gen marketer today?
Oh, wow. It's a great question. I think what makes a really great demand gen marketer is someone who isn't afraid to innovate and challenge themselves. So just because something performed really well a year ago, I promise you it's not going to perform the same. Everything is changing, even more so because of what's happened in the past year and a half. And challenge yourself and challenge those around you to think differently too. I think that makes a really good demand gen marketer. Being curious and digging into data to solve problems is really necessary. If you don't find an answer, for a problem that you have and you've looked at the data, take a step back and then come at it at a different angle, because there is a way to solve a problem. There's a way to glean insights, and just going, well, the data shows it's not working, but there's something more there. What is the context behind it? Why isn't it resonating with the prospect or the current customer, however you're working your demand efforts? So to be a really strong demand gen marketer, it's all of those things. Innovating, being curious, challenging what you've done before, all of those. And especially if you're in the agency world, bringing new ideas to the table that challenge your client too. Because I will tell you that as someone who, ran the digital media and analytics at my previous agency and then moved into run all of our customer success, so our sales and marketing and customer success managers, that is the one thing clients want. They want to be challenged. They want you as the expert to go, I know this is what you want to do, but how about we try it this way? Instead of just going, okay, check, we're doing that, check, we're doing that. Customers don't want order takers. They want partners.
I mean, that's great. That makes sense. In marketing, things change all the time. Now there's no cookies. What are we going to do? Like it's just GDPR.
Constantly changing.
Things keep changing. It's constantly. So for like those listening, like if they want to get something specific, like when you say challenge your client or innovate, can you give an example? Or maybe there's a framework?
Yeah, I always say you start with the problem that you're trying to solve. So you identify the problem and what you're trying to solve and what results you're trying to get. And from there, it is, okay, what are the important pieces of data I need to dig into this and solve this problem? What has been working? What hasn't been working? If this thing has been working over here, understanding why it's been working and how you could actually do it better or differently. Always start with the problem and what you're trying to achieve, and then build from there with data and insights, and challenge yourself. Don't be afraid to go, okay, I'm testing this thing, and give yourself at this level of data or this amount of time, depending on the type of program you're running. I'm going to reevaluate and really test if this is, poke at it myself and go, did I do what I wanted to do? Is this changing anything? Is this moving the needle differently? And if it's not, rethink about it again, right? Like it's okay to test yourself and fail. That's digital marketing, especially in this world we live in now where things change so much. Testing and learning and testing and learning. And just because something, again, I go back to just because something worked a year ago or even a month ago doesn't mean it's going to keep working the same. So constantly be poking at things and be really curious and analytical about what you're trying to do.
That's great. I'm going to throw a little bit of weird question, but so some people now want to try new medium or channel, like for example, like advertising on Spotify or putting content for free on LinkedIn, like the ways that you can't really measure. So there's that side of demand gen where you can't always measure and have data for it. How would you suggest market a balance between something that you can measure, something that's tested and proven, versus something that you just want to poke around a little bit, but you might not see result for another year or so?
I think, first of all, everything can be measured in some form. So that's the great thing about the world we live in, especially digital. It can be measured in some form. It's really important to be really clear what you're trying to achieve, because there is a huge important place for having channels and tactics that aren't necessarily driving towards that demand capture, getting that person to raise their hand, but they're still important. And it's one of the reasons why multi-touch attribution or any kind of attribution that isn't last touch is really important, because all of these efforts up here fill the funnel. No one raises their hand and decides just one day to wake up and they want your product if they have no idea who you are. You always want to tie the pieces together and don't just keep it as a silo. Anytime you're doing organic, for instance, if you're doing organic social, you want to see a lift in other areas, whether that's positive sentiment or visits to your website, whatever that happens to be. There's always a metric to test or to point to. So make sure when you're testing that you know what you're trying to achieve and you're not just testing blindly.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think like what people usually talk about is sometimes it doesn't happen immediately.
No.
Like outbound, like the organic, it takes forever. And sometimes like the attribution tools out there, I mean, there's a certain time. Is it like 3 months, 6 months? But sometimes you don't see the result till like 9 months later, which is terrifying for marketers to hear.
It
could happen.
It is terrifying, but you also have to be really aware of the sales cycles of your of the different prospects you're trying to reach, and what are your sales cycles as a company, because depending on, we'll just use, if you're trying to sell to a company that's a $5 billion company, that sales cycle is a lot longer, which means there are going to be things that you do up top that you're right, you don't see the impact on until later, which is the point of looking at what is the lift of each thing along the journey, and also identifying how many touches, looking into the data and understanding how many touches it takes from an anonymous prospect to a closed won opportunity, and what are the different points along the way. That's all really important to understand.
Yeah, the sales cycle is definitely something that people need to keep in mind, because sometimes people just, there's this new shiny techniques and methods, let's go for it. Completely forgot, like the ABM is something that everyone talks about, but then you also got to balance. If your ACV is less than a certain number, it might not make sense to do ABM at all.
And it depends on how you're executing ABM, because there's the kind of the scale ABM, and then there's the one-to-one. And so I think what marketers should probably get more comfortable with is account-based marketing at scale. So how do we market a target account, a list of target accounts throughout the entire journey? Let's focus on what are the key target accounts throughout the entire journey. And then at a certain point, it becomes more one-to-one. But you have to start them at the top of the funnel and do all that engagement and education to move them along. And so I think about ABM as not necessarily just this really one-to-one focus. I think account-based marketing is what really good demand gen is. And it can be at scale, and it can be very personalized. And both of those things should be part of the experience.
If I could throw an emoji right now, I would give you the two hand raise emoji for everything you just amen. That's amazing. Yeah. So we're gonna segue into a fun question, outside of work. What is your number one DIY life hack?
Oh. I feel like I have a couple.
I'll take two.
Okay. Frozen grapes are wonderful for keeping wine cold on hot summer days. So a couple frozen grapes in your wine keeps it nice and chilled. Also good for you because grapes. I think so I would say toothpaste, but specifically non-gel toothpaste, non-whitening toothpaste can do a lot of things that people don't even realize. You can clean ink spots from upholstery. You can also get scratches out of non-coated glass. So if you have a window that got scratched, as long as it's not specialty coated, you can clean it with a non-gel. You can buff it out with a non-gel toothpaste.
Are you serious?
Seriously.
Wow. I didn't know that. I'm looking straight at my windows right now. I'm like, is there any scratches? I want to try. Thanks for sharing those too. I heard of the frozen grapes before, but the non-gel toothpaste, interesting.
Yeah, you'd be surprised. Toothpaste has got many great, beyond cleaning your teeth, it has many great abilities.
Great. So as a final question, before I let you go, can you share some words of encouragement for sales and marketers that's listening right now?
Oh, absolutely. I would say my number one piece of encouragement is to be your own advocate. Always be your own advocate. If you want a new project, you want to be promoted, you have to be the one to speak up, be vocal, carve the path that you want, which I know isn't always easy, but if you want to be a change maker, it's never going to be easy. And you might have a wonderful manager who also sees your value, and I hope you all do. But if you don't, even if you don't, you have to be your biggest fan before anyone else is going to be. I've always been very vocal with my managers about where I want to get in my career, and I think that has actually helped me to grow the way I've wanted to grow, because I've always asked for more responsibility, bigger projects, been very clear about my next step is X. How do I get there? Let's work together. Here's what I think I need to do. I'm the one who owns that growth. And I think sometimes people think it's the manager's job to help them grow. It's the manager's job to support you in your growth, but you have to advocate for yourself.
100%. Did I say that I want to do the emoji again?
Yeah.
I love that. I'm going to take that part out, turn it into a video and send it to everyone in my team.